Okay, we'll start. नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्धस्सा नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्धस्सा नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्धस्सा इतिपिसो भगवारहं सम्मा संबुद्धो विद्याचरण संपन्नो सुगतो लोकविदु अनुत्तरो पुरिसदम्म सारथि सत्ता देव मनुष्याणां बुद्धो भगवाति नमो तस्स सम्मा संबुद्धस्सा स्वाखातो भगवता धम्मो संदिटिको अकालिको एहिपस्सिको वपनायको पच्छत्तं वेदितव्यो विन्नुहीति नमो तस्स नियानिकस्स धम्मस्सा सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो उजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो सामीचिपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संगो यदिदं चत्तारि पुरिस युगानि अट्टपुरिस पुग्गल एसा भगवतो सावक संगो आहुनेयो पाहुनेयो दक्षिणेयो अंजलिकरणीयो अनुत्तरं पुण्यक्षेतं लोकस्साति नमो तस्स अट्ट अर्य पुग्गला महासंगसा एकं समयं भगवा वाराणस्यं विहरति इसी पटने मिगदाये तत्र को भगवा पंचवग्ये भिक्खु आमन्तेसि भिक्खवोति बदन्तेति ते भिक्खु भगवतो पच्चसो सुं भगवाये तदवोच रूपं भिक्खवे अनत्ता रूपं च हिदं भिक्खवे अत्था अभविस्सा नैदं रूपं आबादाय संवत्तेया लब्धेत च रूपे एवं मे रूपं होतु एवं मे रूपं मा होसीति यस्मा च को भिक्खवे रूपं अनत्ता तस्मा रूपं आबादाय संवत्तति न च लभ्यति रूपे एवं मे रूपं होतु एवं मे रूपं मा अहोसीति वेदना अनत्ता वेदना च हिदं भिक्खवे अत्ता भविस्सा नैदं वेदना अबादाय संवत्ते यलब्धेत च वेदनीया एवं मे वेदना होतु एवं मे वेदना मा अहोसीति यस्मा च को भिक्खवे वेदना अनत्ता तस्मा वेदना अबादाय संवत्तति न च लभ्यति वेदनाय एवं मे वेदना होतु एवं मे वेदना मा अहोसीति संज्ञा अनत्ता संकारा च हिदं भिक्खवे अत्ता अभविस्संसु नैदं संकारा आबादाय संवत्तेयुं लभ्येत च संकारेषु एवं मे संकारा होन्तु एवं मे संकारा मा अहेसुन्ति यस्मा च को भिक्खवे संकार अनत्ता तस्मा संकार आबादाय संवत्तन्ति न च लभ्यति संकारेषु एवं मे संकारा होन्तु एवं मे संकारा मा अहेसुन्ति विज्ञानं गनत्ता विज्ञानं च हिदं भिक्खवे अत्ता भविस्स नैदं विज्ञानं अबादाय संवत्तेया लब्धेत च विज्ञाने एवं मे विज्ञानं होतु एवं मे विज्ञानं मा अहोसीति यस्मा च को भिक्खवे विज्ञानं गनत्ता तस्मा विज्ञानं आबादाय संवत्तति न च लभ्यति विज्ञाने एवं मे विज्ञानं होतु एवं मे विज्ञानं मा अहोसीति तं किं मन्याथा भिक्खवे रूपं नित्यं वा अनित्यं वाति अनित्यं बन्ते यं पना नित्यं दुःखं वा तं सुखं वाति दुःखं बन्ते यं पना नित्यं दुःखं विपरिणामधम्मं कल्लं नूतं समनुपस्थितुं एतं मम येषोऽहमस्मि येषो मे अत्ताति नो हेतं बन्ते वेदना संज्ञा संकारा विज्ञानं नित्यं वा अनित्यं वाति अनित्यं बन्ते यं पना नित्यं दुःखं वा तं सुखं वाति दुःखं बन्ते यं पना नित्यं दुःखं विपरिणामधम्मं कल्लं नूतं समनुपस्थितं एतं मम येषोऽहमस्मि येषो मे अत्ताति नो हेतं बन्ते तस्मातिहा भिक्खवे यं किञ्चि रूपं अतीतनाग अतीता अगत पच्चुपन्ननां अज्जत्तं वा बहिद्दा वा ओलारिकं वा सुकुमं वा हीनं वा पणितं वा यं दूरे सन्तिके वा सब्बं रूपं नेतं मम नेषोऽहमस्मि न नेषो अत्ताति एवमेतं यथाभूतं सम्मप्पन्याय दत्तब्बं याकाचि वेदना अतीता आगत पच्चुपन्ना अज्जत्ता वा बहिद्दा वा पे ये दूरे सन्तिके वा सब्बा वेदना नेतं मम नेषोऽहमस्मि नामे सो अत्ताति एवमेतं यथाभूतं Dhammapanyaya dattabbang yakachi sanya ekechi sankara Ekinchi vinyanang evam passang bhikkave sutava arya savaka rupasminchi nibbanditi vedanayapi nibbindati sanyayapi nibbindati sankare supi nibbindati vinyanasminpi nibbindati nibbindam virajyati viraga vimuchyati vimuttasming vimuttamti nanang hoti kina jati usitang brahmacharyang katang karaniyang naparang ittattayati pajanati iti idamavocha bhagava attamana panchavaggiya bhikkhu bhagavato upasitang abhinandung imasmin chapana veyyakarnasmin banyamane panchavaggiyanang bhikkhunang anupadaya asavehi chittani vimuchchim suti yetena saccavajjena sotino hotu sabbada yetena saccavajjena hotu no jaya mangalam yetena saccavajjena patuno ratanattayang sabbityo vivajjantu sabbarogo vinassatu Mate bhavatvantarayo sukhi dīgāyuko bhava bhavatu sabba mangalang rakkantu sabba devata sabba buddhanubhavena sabba dhammanubhavena sabba sanghanubhavena sadaswati bhavantu te imina punyakambhena mame bala samagamo satang samagamo hotu yava nibbana pattiya idang me punyakamang asavakayang varankotu Sabba dukkha pamucchatu nibbana sampachayo hotu. Okay, so this chanting, this is about this the concept card. It's not the concept actually; it's the reality. It's the absolute reality of anatta. This chanting is this discourse is called Anatta Lakkana Sutta. The characteristic of this non-self. We hold on to a few things as like permanent as Atma. But in reality, there is nothing which can hold on to because everything is changing. And everything, because it is changing, it leads to some kind of dissatisfactoriness, unsatisfactoriness, some kind of oppression, some kind of suffering. And because of that, you can't hold on to anything as permanent, as self, as me, or my Atma, or my Atta. So that is the absolute, say, declaration by all the Buddhas. Not just our Gautama Buddha, all the Buddhas, they declare that nothing we can hold on to in this world and everything is changing, moment to moment changing. And with regard to the body and the mind and the four components of the mind. So there is nothing we can really hold on to because of its ever-changing nature. And because of that ever-changing nature, it creates some kind of unsatisfactoriness. And because of these things, so you can definitely deduce that there is nothing permanent, nothing self, nothing I, nothing Atma. That is the absolute declaration about this absolute truths by Buddha. But many times, conventionally, so we have to use, we have to project, we have to keep in front the so-called I, so-called self. So again, if you are more refined, then you can keep the physicality and mentality, the refined forms of physicality, the refined forms of mentality in the front, and you can derive the relatively better happiness, relatively higher happiness. If you keep the grass I, the grass body, the grass mentality, taking it as I, and if you keep it in the front and you start playing in this world or working in this world, start interacting in this world, then you get the grass happiness or the suffering. So that complete range of the grass I to the subtle I to no I, that complete range one should know. Just like the complete range of happiness one should know. That several times we used to discuss, like that happiness quotient, happiness index, in the complete range of happiness. So this complete holding on to, identify oneself with this complete range of I, the gross I, the subtle I, and no I. This complete range, if you know, then automatically you will end up in this complete range of happiness also. Complete range of happiness, the gross happiness, the subtle happiness, and the happiness beyond these worldly things, this mundane happiness, that supramundane happiness, that nibbanic bliss. This complete range is dependent upon the understanding of the complete range of this I also. This I, this complete range of I, self, the so-called Atma, that many theistic philosophies, they believe in the concept of Atma. But the modern, the modern philosophy, let us not bring in this concept of Atma. Definitely there is this concept of self. In several ways people project self, and without projecting the self, you can't function in this world. For that matter, you can't function with yourself also, even for meditation also, even for if you're alone, if you're secluded, if you're meditating, there also this concept of I, this role of I is very much there. But initially one should transcend from this gross I, very solid I, that very, say, rigid I, which brings a lot of suffering. The happiness there, it is very, very, like say, very, very, say, gross, and it's more than happiness. There will be more suffering on. When you start sensitizing this I, start understanding the different dimensions of I, make, say, melting this I, or substituting this gross I with the subtle I, by understanding the superior subtle qualities of the mind, subtle nature of the mind, subtle constituents of the mind, and substituting those subtle constituents in place of the gross constituents, then you start deriving the subtle happiness, the superior happiness, the higher happiness. And at one point of time, you can transcend all these grossness and subtleness of this body and mind. And then you end up in completely transcending this, identifying yourself with this body and mind. You completely transcend. Then you end up in what is called the Nibbana, where you have experienced this non-self. Something is experiencing non-self, then that very aspect of your being that is experiencing non-self, it should be the self. In that way, some people may argue, but no. Non-self is non-self. Non-self is experienced by non-self only. So that is the highest experience, highest bliss, highest liberation, highest purification, highest transcending from this body and mind. So because of that reason, that non-self is non-self only. You can't attach, identify any form of I, any form of self to that absolute realization of non-self, which is the absolute happiness also. So in that way, we should understand this complete stretch of the gross self, the subtle self, and no self. That is the objective of this talk. If you know a little bit of this, the Buddhist cosmology, where the I is very gross in the lower realms, like in, say, in the human realms also, let us say, and below human realms, like in the animal realms and all, the attachment to the body is so strong. And because of that strong attachment to the body, ignoring even the mind, in the human realm, at least we attach a little bit about this mind also. But in the animal realms, the attachment or this identification of self is with the body only. And if we go a little higher in this cosmology, Buddhist cosmology, the divine realms, then the attachment to the body is less. Because of that less attachment to the bodies are more refined, but more attachment to the subtle forms of the mind, the subtle feelings, the subtle mental factors, like non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion, like compassion, like appreciation. These subtle things, they take forefront if you keep progressing in this Buddhist cosmology. And then your attachment to the gross self becomes less, and you will just say mitigating or say melting or dissolving this grossness to this your attachment, your identification with the self. And from this body grossness to the mind, you just start transcending. And in the mind also, there are both say the gross or the immoral constituents of the mind and the moral constituents. You start moving from immoral constituents to the moral constituents, immoral chittas to the moral chittas. Then your body becomes much more subtler, like in the Brahmic realms. You become more subtle. Even some of the senses, they completely transcend. The body sense, the nose sense, the tongue sense, they disappear because of the subtleness. Only the mind sense, only the nose sense, and only the eye sense and the ear sense, they function, but they function very, very efficiently, very, very profoundly. And in that way, the attachment to the self, to the gross things like body, that will reduce to a higher level. Then you completely transcend all attachment to the body. Then you end up in what is called Arupa Brahma planes, where there is no Rupa at all. There is Arupa, there is no body, because you are not attachment to this body. Even an iota of attachment is not there to the body. You're completely transcended. Yourself, you're not identifying yourself with the body. You just identify this arupa states of the mind only. It's very, very superior. It encompasses the whole universe. So that kind of arupa minds, you just attach to that kind of arupa minds. And if you develop much more sensitivity, much more detachment to this idea of self, then you transcend that arupa minds also. And then you end up in what is called the nibbana, and that is the true non-self. That is the true nature of say that intelligence that you have developed, to not identify with any kind of self, either any component of the mind or any component of the body. You are completely detached your identity with both the body and mind, absolutely. Then you end up in that state of non-self, and that is the ultimate state and the true state, and the most blissful, most eternal state, where there is no return from that state. You won't fall back into any kind of attachments to the body and mind, and thereby there are no births and rebirths in this samsara or in this worldliness. So in that way, this aspect of non-self, understanding and comprehending this aspect of non-self, both intellectually and also experientially, that is the crux of the Buddha's teaching. And this chanting that we have chanted now, Anatta Lakkana Sutta, this is the very second discourse given by Buddha after his enlightenment, when he started looking for the suitable people who can understand this concept of, say, Four Noble Truths, the concept of moderation, and again this concept of non-self. Then they can be liberated. And of course, with matured spirituality, spiritual faculties, like the 5 of his disciples or friends, or the people who used to serve him, they left him and they went to the Varanasi. From Bodh Gaya, they went to Varanasi, thinking that Buddha is not practicing the right practices. But after Buddha's enlightenment, by following this middle path, not completely torturing the body or not completely indulging in the sensual things, so he became supremely enlightened. He got the enlightenment under Bodhi tree, and he went back to Varanasi in search of these 5 disciples, and he taught the first discourse, the Machakkapavatana Sutta. There, he just emphasized on this moderation, non-extremism, this mind-centeredness, and this, say, coming out of this holding on to this sensuality or this worldliness, or completely having this strong view of this soul or this supreme soul and simply torturing the body, anticipating the anticipation of liberating the soul. Those extreme approaches, he just denied, he just rejected, and he just proclaimed this mind-centered, moderate approach, middle path approach that has softened the minds of these five disciples. And then with a little more discussion, all the five disciples, they could see the glimpse of the Nibbana, that is, they become Sotapana. And then after a couple of days, he gave this Anatta Lakkana Sutta, the one that I chanted now. And there he highlighted the importance of this non-self. There is no need to identify yourself with your body, because why you need not identify this body? That explanation is there that we will see maybe after some time. And then there is no need to identify yourself with these four faculties of the mind, because they are changing, just like the body is also moment to moment changing. And when something is changing, it definitely creates some unsatisfactoriness, some kind of oppression. And the same with the mind also, our Vedanas, our feelings are also moment to moment changing, our consciousness also moment to moment changing, our confidence also moment to moment changing, our sankaras, our our intentions, they're all changing moment to moment. Even our perceptions are also changing moment to moment. Even these things are so like say, he gives one more analogy also, like burning, like flame. In the flames, moment to moment, the flames come and go, come and arise and perish, the new flame will come. In a flame, the burning flame. In the same way, all these things are like flames, they arise and perish, new flame will come, new feeling will come, go, and new intentions will arise and go, new chittas, new consciousness will arise and go, perish. That's what is this nature of this body and mind. Because of this rapidity of their arising and perishing, they are relatively permanent. The body also looks, how it's changing, it's permanent. But if you ask a scientist, he says moment to moment, lakhs of cells are producing, lakhs of cells are destroying. In the same way, when you become a very, very focused, concentrated spiritual scientist, you can see moment to moment all these matter in the form of kalapas in the Abhidhamma that you might have studied or understood, the Abhidhamma classes also. So moment to moment, all these kalapas, these body particles, they arise and perish. The same way, all these mind particles also, mind, mental, chetasikas, chittas, moment to moment, faster than the body, they arise and perish. So if that is the reality of all these mind-body phenomena, and I started searching thoroughly in this mind-body phenomena, I couldn't see anything that is permanent. I couldn't see anything that has created this. It's our own attachment to this body, our own attachment to this mind, attachment to these different faculties of the mind, the four faculties of the mind. That is only bringing us again and again to this worldliness. There is no other creator who has really created this body or created this mind or created these births and rebirths. That's what Buddha proclaims after his enlightenment. Anichavata sankaras. Everything is changing. No, I didn't see the Gahakaraka. So the builder of this house, there is no God or no creator who is building this house with mind and body. It's our own attachment, with our own identification with this body as self, with this mind as self, with this consciousness as self, as this feeling as self, we identify this as my Atma or myself, this my personality, with my I. That way, if you identify, that very lack of intelligence of identifying this body as mine or me or myself, or this lack of intelligence of identifying with this consciousness as my or me or myself, or with these feelings, or with these intentions, or with these perceptions, the four components that many of you are working on them in your meditation courses. So all these four components, there is no need to identify with them as me or myself or my Atma. Because they're ever moment to moment they're changing based on your say hidden identification. You have created them, and the more you disidentify from them, then the more you become liberated. And once you completely disconnect from them, disidentify from them, then you experience the non-self, which is the absolute reality, and that is absolute liberation also. So once you could strike it, then there is no falling back into this ignorance of holding on to this body, holding on to these different components of the mind as I or myself, again and again getting the births, rebirths. That trap you can escape, that ignorance you can escape. That is what is the essence of this. Of course, that is the essence of all Buddha's teachings. But in this Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, Anatta means like this non-self, the characteristics of non-self. Lakkhana means Lakshana, characteristics. The characteristics of non-self discourse. Buddha very logically. So, if this body, that of course, in English we will see, we will spend some 5-10 minutes on that because it is very beautiful sutta. It's very quite simple. But those who are struck with these theistic ideas or say the atheistic ideas, for them they may find it little difficult because to come out of those views and understanding this, it may be some difficulty may be there. But those who have some free mind, immediately they could connect to this and they can appreciate this sutta and understand this non-self very easily. And after listening this, all the 5 bhikkhus, they completely became emancipated. They became arhants. This is the first sutta after listening to which the humans became arhants. That is the power of this sutta, this Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. That we will see maybe after some time, some 10-15 minutes. Before that, what I wanted to say, to make the things little simpler. So we will just refresh our memory with this 4 components of the mind and one more component, that is the body. These are called the 5 aggregates. Body is one aggregate, and the 4 aggregates, the consciousness, chitta, vedana, your feelings, and then sankara, your intentions, and other your other say you can say the mental factors, mental concomitants, which make you to attach to this this mind and body. You can say the defilements also. And then the one more is perception, your understanding, your analytical mind. So these are the 4 components of the mind. So if you attach to any one of them, the 4 components of the mind, or even to this body, that generally very gross people or the animals, they attach this self with their body only. And they project always the body in the front. In all their interactions with the world, they keep the body in the front. They're more of body conscious beings. Because that's what they could see, that grossness of the body, it's very much seen, very much felt. So because of that, they identify themselves with this body and they keep it in the front. And of course, other beings also, when they start identifying with the body and keep it in the front, and many a times, instead of harmony, only the clashes only we can experience, we can see. So when you just, in the same way, so many people, they identify, again, when they become a little more subtler, they identify themselves with the consciousness as I or self. So many of these modern day philosophies, the Indian philosophies, they try to identify the consciousness as permanent. So they don't want to bring in this concept of Atma. They want to simply, with the sophistication in their words, they want to say this consciousness is the Atma that is permanent. Awareness, and so one should build this consciousness. One should develop this. One should expand this to the whole universe. Then it becomes universal consciousness. then your little small ego, small I, small Atma, it will become one with the bigger ego, bigger I, bigger Atma, bigger consciousness, universal consciousness. And that's what is liberation. In that way, many philosophies they propagating the idea. But here the point is even that consciousness is also it is anicca, it is arising and perishing. Your own consciousness that you're experiencing in your mind, you can't connect it with the universal consciousness. That's all like humbug. That's not true. It's all your consciousness is arising because of your intentions, because of your feelings, because of your perception only. This consciousness is arising. And when your intentions, your perceptions change, your consciousness also will change. There's no relation between your consciousness and someone else's consciousness, the other person's consciousness. His consciousness is sum total of his his chetasikas, his mental factors, his perception, his intention. That's completely different from your consciousness. There's nothing like if I purify my consciousness and he and I can become one with his consciousness. All this is wrong understanding, wrong view, wrong intelligence. That's what is hmm, uh, this impermanent law, this non-self law of Buddha talks about. This non-self, there is nothing like self or permanent or Atma, or which may be consciousness. As many people they say, consciousness is universal. Consciousness is the connecting link between all beings. In that way, some people promote and try to bring in that oneness in the form of consciousness, in the form of universal consciousness. But Buddha rejects that. Your consciousness is a result of your intentions, your mental factors, your defilements. That's it. So that's why you should work on your defilements to see that your consciousness becomes more and more subtle, and when it complete you with your intellect, with your fine intellect, you refine this, you purify all the defilements, then the consciousness will not arise at all. And that is what is Nibbana. That is what is the true realization of non-self, and that is what is Nibbana. But the theistic approaches is self should be purified, the Atma should be purified, and it should become one with the universal Atma, that is Paramatma, that is universal consciousness. So that is the approach of these theistic people. But there it is like the self becomes universal self. That concept, it is not true. That leads to a lot of say you will ignore about the purification of the mind, ignore about working on your own mind. So you simply try to depend on the so-called imaginary concept of universal consciousness, the imaginary concept of universal creator, and then you forget about purifying your mind, forget about sensitizing, purifying, and substituting the negative defilements of your mind with the positive mental factors, and thereby liberating the mind will not be an authoritative process. Because of that reason, the concept of non-self, not identifying your consciousness as me and my Atma, the same way not identifying yourself with this, with your feelings also. In some theistic say philosophies, sects, love for them, love is Atma. The pure that if you purify love, then you can become one with this universal love. Then you connect with the universal creator who is full of this universal love. In that way they promote. But again, Buddha says even this love, even these feelings, they are not permanent. But you have to work on these qualities of love, compassion, and all to substitute the negative qualities like anger, hatred. But even this love is also impermanent, it is ever changing. And at one point of time, this love, it becomes equanimity, it becomes again nothing. So working on your own mind is crucial. Thinking that there is something beyond me, which is universal, I want to simply connect to it. That kind of notions will not come when you understand about like your mind is the product of your own thinking, your own defilements, your own cultivating abilities, cultivating skills, cultivating intelligence. If that idea has to arise in your mind, then you should understand this idea of not identifying either your consciousness or your feelings as I, as Atma, as me, then you can independently, individually, you can work on your mind and keep purifying your mind. And of course, loving others, being compassionate to others, it will again purify your mind only. There is no need to keep the notion that I will become one with the universe. It may happen as in the case of Arupa Brahmas, but you should not forget that that is also impermanent. So just to bring in that kind of intelligence, that all these things, that is absolute pure feelings like love, compassion, they're also impermanent. We should not stop there. And once you develop this very powerful universal love, and there is a possibility of you become like egoistic, because after all, this very concept of self, concept of Atma is nothing but ego, some kind of identifying. Identifying is ego. Ahankara is giving akara to aham. So some akara if you give, thinking that there is aham, there is me, there is I, there is self, then you are stuck there. But when you understand that there is no need to give any akara to this me, to this self, then that is what is non-self. So in that way, so the complete range of, as I was telling you, according to this Buddhist cosmology, also if you can understand, there is no need to give any kind of akara to any of these four mental aggregates or this physical aggregate body. And from that intelligence, if you start working on your mind, start purifying your mind, then the purification becomes very authoritative. So that kind of right authoritative purification of the mind is, say, uh, suggested by Buddha, instructed by Buddha, recommended by Buddha in the form of Shila, Samadhi, Panya. There also you need not keep these concepts of I and the Supreme I, Atma, Paramatma. So simply, the absolute thing is non-self. But of course, we can't simply conclude non-self is absolute and I am absolute, he is absolute non-self, I am absolute non-self. And I can go and hit anything because everything is non-self. In that way, you can't see, but you should slowly keep purifying, and that in the purification process, start disconnecting from identifying with the gross body, go to the subtle body, start disconnect from the gross mind, go to the subtle mind. In all these purification process, in these meditation techniques, in these punyas, in all the punya kriyas also, like dana, shila, bhavana, starting with faith, right? Confidence in this, to start practicing dana, shila, bhavana, apachayana, vacha. Then slowly, you start sensitizing, start dissolving these rigid eyes with the subtle eye. And but you should have this complete wide range, this wide canvas, the complete canvas of this solid, rigid eye to subtle eye to non-eye, to the non-self. So if this complete canvas is there, then the purification becomes more skillful, more authoritative. Because of that reason, you should know this concept of anatta also. And then working on your mind becomes more authoritative, more clear, more wholesome. So because of that reason only, this clear distinction of these theistic approaches of Atma and this concept of Anatma or Anatta, we should have that clarity. Okay. Then always, as I told you, this very identification, it will not stop there. This very identification of, say, this is me, this is myself, this consciousness is me, and this is myself, and these feelings, or this love is me, or this is myself, or this energy. Again, there are so many philosophies. For them, the universal energy, that power and energy, that itself is like they call it as the permanent thing. That is like the self. If you start developing that Atma Shakti, then you become one with the Paramatma Shakti, or we will become one with the energy of the Creator. In that way, they promote this permanence, the individual permanence and the universal permanence. Yeah. Again, this energy also, this intention, this energy, this willpower, these volitions, they are also impermanent. They are also arise and perish. You need not hold on to them as permanent. Your confidence, your energies, your intentions, that kind of objectivity, that kind of intelligent way of looking at all these mental factors as they are, then that kind of intelligence, that kind of understanding will make you to realize this non-self. The same way your analytical power also, your logical power also, it has its own limitations. And it's also ever changing. Perceptions also ever changing. But with the right perceptions, with the right view, keep on working, then you can step back and can see all these mental aggregates as they are changing, and they create some kind of oppression and unsatisfactoriness. Then you can appreciate the concept of non-self, the reality of non-self. Okay, so in any ways you identify with any of the mental factors or with the body, it will not remain there itself. It will lead to the desires. Any identification of your ego, of yourself, with any of these, the body or the bodily senses, and thereby the sense pleasures will become more and more predominant. If you identify more with the body, this thinking this body is me, then your sensual pleasures, your desire for sensual pleasures, it will become more and more strong. The kama tanaha becomes more and strong. And if you start identifying with your mental aggregates, like this feeling is me, this confidence is me, this perception is me, this consciousness is me and myself, then you develop what is called the bhavatanaha, that I-ness and minus egos. You have to satiate. The people should listen to me and I should show my power. That kind of bhavatanaha, that desire to inflate that I-ness and minus with I have superior intellect, I have superior feelings, I have superior confidence, I have superior consciousness. That way, that I, when it is attached to these four aggregates of the mind, then you develop what is called the bhavatanaha. Bhavatanaha means the desire to become, the desire to be, the desire to shop, the desire to exist. That kind of desires, it is the result of, it is a product of your identity, yourself, identifying yourself with one of these mental aggregates. Again, as you very much know, that all the desires, they lead to suffering only. That the cause of suffering, as it is very clearly explained in the Four Noble Truths. The desire is the cause of suffering, the second noble truth. So why this desire is arising in us? Because of our identity, because of identifying myself with the body or with the four faculties of the mind, that is creating these desires. And the vibhavatanaha, not to become. Bhava means like to become something. Vibhava means not to become, simply destroyed, simply get even the desire to become, say, completely annihilate or destroy yourself. Some people, they have the desire by killing oneself or by attempting suicide, or even the desire to get nibbana, the strong desire. It is again, I should get nibbana. Again, some identifying yourself with this body, with this mind, that is making you to develop this desire of vibhavatanaha also. The desire of the desire of non-becoming, desire of becoming zero, because desire of becoming shunya, that is also desire. If you simply have this identity of body and mind, then only the desire comes. If you simply, in this very moment itself, if you start learning how to be non-self, how to look at these things as separate, that is what is the cultivation. That is what is the practice. There is no need to desire for it and crave for it and forget about your duty of looking at the things by segregating, by separating yourself, by looking at the things with this non-self mode, the mind, this non-self understanding of the mind. So that will not arise if you have any a little bit of identification of yourself with the body or with the four aggregates of the mind. So all these things, of course, Buddha has explained in the Brahmajala Sutta also, different kinds of attavadas, different kinds of theories, soul theories. People attached the soul with their feelings, with their consciousness as soul, feeling as soul. All those things are refuted by Buddha because of the ever-changing nature of all these mental aggregates also. So if that understanding is there, then working on these different right view meditations, right view practices becomes easy. When you are struck with, so any one of these identities, any one of these identifying yourself with the body and these four components of the mind, then you can't authoritatively work on the different practices and different meditations, right view meditations, then authoritative in a proper way. So in that way, all the identities of identifying myself with my body, with this four aggregates of the mind, it will arouse desires in different ways, and thereby the defilements. That's what is explained again in the dependent origination. Because of the avidya, because of the ignorance of identifying myself with the body and with different four faculties of the mind, that is the cause. Avidya pachaya sankara, that avidya, that ignorance is the cause for sankara. Sankara means all these desires and defilements. All these desires and defilements, these mental formations of desires and defilements, they are rooted in this identification of this self. When you identify any of these five aggregates as me, as mine, or as self, then only these defilements and desires arise. If you don't identify with the body, with the four mental aggregates, then these desires and defilements will not arise. But in the overnight, in one thought, you can't come out of this kind of non-identifying. It has to be practiced. This non-identified identification of self with any of these five aggregates. It has to be practiced systematically, step by step. Simply, logically, if you comprehend that there is no need to identify, you should not end there itself. You should not stop there itself. You should put it into practice, like practicing experientially, consciously, not to identify. In all right view meditations, all right view meritorious actions, that's what you learn. That's how you practice this non-self. So then automatically these desires and defilements, they become more and more subtle. They will start reducing. The lesser your identification with the identification of yourself with the body and mind, the lesser will be your desires and defilements. Then automatically it will keep reducing your attachment to becoming or taking birth in the grass. The realms or the planes of existence, you won't take birth, you will take birth in the very subtle existences, and then you will progress upwards only when you develop this kind of skillfulness, sensitivity of not identifying with this self, then automatically liberation also becomes easy. So because of that reason, Buddha gave this complete stretch of how to identify from gross self to subtle self, and also not to stop there, how to completely disidentify, disconnect from this very notion of self and end up in non-self, because everything is nothing, everything is, our body is burning, body is like, it is ever changing, there's nothing permanent. So that's what is the same way the mind, the mental factors also. Because of that reason, there is no need to hold on to anything as me or self. So that is what is explained in this Anatta Lakkana Sutta also. We'll just see maybe for some 5-10 minutes. So what is this Anatta Lakkana Sutta in English also? Then you will get some kind of authority, some kind of absolute Buddha's words also. If you know, then you will get more confidence in this non-identification of self with the four aggregates of the mind and also with the body, and then practicing the meditations, progressing in this path of right view mind culture, right view meditations becomes more authoritative. So, what is the explanation of this Anatta Lakkhana Sutta? Thus, I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Benares in the deer park at Isipatana. There he addressed the bhikkhus, the group of 5 bhikkhus. Then they said, Venerable Sir, the Blessed One said this, because form is not self. For form self, then this form would not lead to affliction, and one could have it of form. Let my form be thus, let my form be not thus, and since form is not self, so it leads to affliction, and none can have it of form. Let my form be this, let my form be not thus. This form means this body. So this body is not self because this body is like it is bound to affliction. Somewhere the other way, this body has to undergo pain, suffering, affliction. Is it not? Some at least some kind of unpleasant sensations. Definitely, we feel when some kind of unpleasantness is there, affliction is there. Then how can you say it as Atma? Atma, as defined by the theists, is like pure. It is like it is. There is no suffering there. It's absolute happiness, absolute purity. But if this body is absolute pure and absolute happiness, but why this affliction? Why this kind of pain in this body? Because of that logic, you should say that you should deny this idea that body is me or myself or my Atma. That idea, just keep it away from your mind. And also, if it is so pure, then you should have kept away all these influences on this body. But this body is not so pure and it is so dependent on so many things. And in that way, again, you can't conclude the body as Atma. It is dependent, it is not so pure, it is bound to afflictions. Because of these reasons, the body you can't say as Atma. The same thing, the same logic holds good to other 4 faculties of the mind also. Your feelings also, they're they're bound to have some bad feelings, wrong feelings, suffering feelings. Your energies, your confidence also bound to go through the lows and highs. Your perceptions also, they are bound to go through lows and highs. Your consciousness also bound to go to highs and lows. So that is the nature of all the 4 aggregates of the mind also. Then you can't conclude them as pure and Atma and the best happiness, ultimate happiness. That way you can't conclude. So that way, Buddha is explaining each one of them that they are bound to affliction, they are bound to not to have purity, or they are bound to depend on other things. They can't exist independently. As the theists say, Atma is independent, Atma is pure, Atma is absolute bliss. None of these things, none of these qualities you can see either in the body or in the 4 faculties of the mind. Because of that reason, you can't conclude to any one of these 4 faculties or the 5th one, this body, as Atma, as self, as me. That way, there is no need to conclude. And one more thing also, Buddha says, everything is changing, anicca. The body is moment to moment changing, as I told you. And the same thing, of course, each one Buddha explains any kind of feeling, whatever, any kind of perception, whatever, any kind of determination or confidence, intention, whatever, any kind of consciousness, whatever, whether internal, all of them are bound to affliction. All of them are, say, dependent. All of them are dependent. All of them are bound to affliction and pain and suffering. All of them are ever changing moment to moment. If these 3 are the qualities of all these 5 faculties, body faculty and 4 mental faculties, then where is this point of Atma, which people define as there is no pain at all, absolute bliss, absolute happiness, and they're permanent, that way they define, and they're in this body or in this mind. That is what is the absolute declaration of the Buddha in this Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. So that kind of understanding of anatta, non-self, anatma, nothing permanent, independent, pure, most blissful atma, anywhere in this body or in these four aggregates of the mind. So that concept, that reality, if you could comprehend, then working on the mind, purifying the mind, substituting the gross with the subtle, and then completely transcending from the subtle to nothingness, to that non-self state, authoritatively, it is possible. Because of that reason, to give emphasis on the path, emphasis on the practice, emphasis on this path of mind purification, one has to understand this concept of this knowledge of non-self, and also the wide range of gross self to non-self. Not don't simply stick on to this concept of non-self and ignore this the path of substituting gross self with the subtle self, and then moving from subtle self to non-self. To have this complete understanding with the clarity in the absolute non-self also. Then your path, your intentions, clarity, your confidence to practice these right to meditations, right to approaches, right to meritorious actions will become more and more clear, and then you progress in this path very authoritative. So that is what is uh, this understanding self and non-self. And again, one last point. So generally in India, Indian philosophers, they are very much bothered about who am I? That is what is the investigation of many Indian philosophers. So that very question is wrong according to this concept of non-self, and this according to this Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, according to the right view. Why that very question is wrong? If there is I, then we should search who is this I. That very I is not there. That there is non-self in this. But this I, it appears sometimes. That's all in the mind. When you are in deep sleep, then there is no I. When you are in good meditation, then also there is no I. And definitely when you are experiencing Nibbanic bliss, when you have started seeing the glimpses of Nibbana, there also no I. If that is the reality, then searching this I, thinking there is one permanent I, with this kind of questions, who am I? That very approach, it is wrong. If there is some permanent I, then you should search who am I? It is there in me. But this very I, this very notion of I, this very thought of I, sometimes it appears, sometimes it don't appear. And if that is the nature of this I, just like any other physicality and mentality, this thought of I also, it is like coming and going. If that is this nature of this I, then why should you look for this I? Why should you search for this this ultimate nature of this I? Just like any other thought, this thought of I also comes and goes. So because of that reason, to make your search more objective, more step back and to look at the things in a more scientific, objective way, should keep away this I also separately, and look at this I, how this arising and perishing. Sometimes it arises in my mind, but sometimes it won't arise. In that way, instead of having this kind of search of who am I, so the real search should be what is this thought of I that comes, that arises in this mind often. In that way, if you start looking at this I, then it will be more successful in realizing this non-self than say going in this path of searching this so-called I, thinking that there is one permanent I, with this question of who am I. Very question arises in your mind because there is a notion deep inside that there is one permanent I, but there is no permanent thought always that is there in your mind as I. Like any other thought, this thought of I also comes and goes. That is the nature of this ego or this I or this self or this so-called concept of Atma, which they try to relate that I in the search of who am I. In the search of who am I, they are searching, I'm searching my Atma. That is what is the notion. But that very I, that very Atma, it is impermanent. It is like say everything is undergoing this affliction and everything is impermanent, ever changing, and everything is like dependent on so many other things. There is nothing like independent, permanent, with blissful I. Then what is the use of in this search of who am I? So instead of that, let your question be, what is this thought of this I that arises sometimes? Often it arises, sometimes it arises. In that way, if you search, then realizing non-self becomes more easy. And say, trotting in this path of right view or this right path, it becomes more easy and more authoritative. So that is what is say this one last conclusion that I want to make with regard to your own search, your own say questioning yourself. So this who am I is not the right approach to get the ultimate knowledge or ultimate realization. So instead of that, the better approach should be, what is this thought of I that arises in this mind? Sometimes that way, if you start looking at this I and self, then you can understand and appreciate this anatta lakkhana, where this Buddha talks about non-self. Understanding non-self becomes easy. Okay, I think this much is enough for today, and already some people started asking some questions, and we'll see these questions. Then we'll come. Vandami Banteji, please explain more about equanimous state of mind. Can we say consciousness is from energy? Consciousness is form of energy. That's what some people say, consciousness is some form of energy. But that energy, consciousness, of course, for everything, some energy should be there. Even for the consciousness, chittas to function, there's some life force is there, is it not? That you people have learned in Abhidhamma. In the consciousness, Chetasika of Jivitendriya should support, should be there. And Jivitendriya is a universal. All the Chittas, the Jivitendriya, the life force, or that energy is present. If that energy is present, then only the Chittas will function. It's a universal mental factor, life force. In that way, of course, the consciousness is also dependent on some energy. So when energy itself is impermanent, then the consciousness which is dependent on energy, life force, and that is also impermanent. So in that way, you can see that nothing is permanent. Even the chittas are not permanent, and the chetasikas are not permanent. Equanimity is, of course, equanimity state of mind is like the mind always wobbles, distracts, disturbs by this ups and downs because of the impermanence of these mental factors, impermanence of chittas. But more and more equanimity, if you bring in, again, which is a mental factor, and automatically the other chetasikas and the chittas that arise from this equanimity mental factor, they become more and more stable. Wobbling becomes lesser and lesser. And then when the wobbling is lesser and lesser, then only the realization of subtleness, the realization of nothingness becomes easier and easier. So in all meditations, awareness meditations, feeling meditations, all meditations, all right to meditation, knowingly or unknowingly, you are transcending, you're moving towards that balancing only, that stillness only, that upekka only, that not falling into the wobbling more and more, that will reduce in all right to meditation. And at one point of time, even that upekka, it's absolutely perfect, then can completely transcend from the mundaneness. Any kind of, even the subtle wobbling will reduce, and that absolutely reduced wobbling will push you into nibbana or in that state of non-self. Then the next question is, Vandami Banteji, how will the feelings of an arhat Arhat will be free from the feelings. Arhat is free from, of course, feelings like they're like kriya, like they don't have any impact on the next chittas, though they may get some feelings. They don't have like there is no resultant, there is no impact on the subsequent chittas. They are so in a way they don't produce the result. They don't have that energy. They don't have that power to produce the result. Even the arhants may smile. Huh? Again, that smile is so neutral, so objective, so pure that it will not have that karmic force. Karmic force means what? That much of strong defilements or strong mental factors in the mind, which have the ability to produce some result. That kind of result producing feelings, result producing mental factors, result producing chittas will not be there in an arhat's mind. They are so superficial, so subtle, so pure. So because of that reason, though their feelings are there, they are very, very, of course, pure and wholesome, definitely. In addition to that wholesomeness, they are so powerless in creating a result. That much pure they are. That is the uh, state of feelings of an arhat. So because they have absolutely realized this non-self. If you have this notion of self, then only your feelings become little strong. They have the karmic force, and then they will produce results. So let us say in the feelings of an ordinary beings. So if the feeling is the love is strong, then the people will reciprocate. They will get back something. In the form of love and care. If the hatred is little bit, that's definitely strong among the human beings, then they will get back. That getting back is what is called the result of the karmic force. That getting back power, even with these wholesome feelings like loving kindness and compassion, it becomes so subtle, so pure. You don't get back that also, the same proportion from the world. That's why the people can't understand the arhants also. They can't identify the arhants also. They look so neutral, so subtle, so calm. The people with these all gross feelings, with gross love, gross care, gross concern, gross hatred, they can't have an impact. They too become little bit null and dull in front of the feelings of an arhant. Some people, some wise people, they develop devotion, they develop some kind of great respect. We accept that other people, they can't react to the feelings and reactions, feelings of an arhant, because the feelings of arhants, they have become so soft, so pure, so delicate, so powerless. Powerless in the sense, the karmic force, the karmic forces of those feelings are say, so less, so meager. That's why they're called kriya chittas. Most of the chittas of the arhants are called kriya chittas because they don't carry they can't give any resultant, they can't give any results. They become so pure and so subtle. Okay, so we'll conclude with one small chanting. नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्सा भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता सर्वबुद्धानुभावेन सर्वधर्मानुभावेन सर्वसङ्घानुभावेन तदा सत्ति भवन्तु ते सुखी भवेयं निर्दुःखो अहं निच्चा अहं विया इदा च मे सुखी होन्तु मा जत्ता च तवेदिनो मां विगम्मन्ते धम्मे सत्ता होन्तु सुखी सदा ततो परञ्चारज्येषु चक्रवालेषु जन्तनो साधु साधु. So as all of you know, we have these online courses in the month of April, all the 4 courses. And after that, we have residential courses also here. It's again the basic courses. So in the month of May and June, we have these 8 days, the residential courses. Of course, you have to be here only, and there will be ample time for practicing all the techniques, the residential courses, the presence of the teacher, and it will be, of course, quite intensive at the same time, quite beneficial also. That we have uh, decided it will be started in the month of May and June, these 2 months. The exact dates and all we announce. Those who want to come here, those who want to recommend some people to come, you can recommend them or come and practice. And then we will again, of course, sometime we will conduct this residential courses in India and other parts of the world. Now, in May and June, we are starting here in Nepal. Along with these April courses also, you can enroll and you can just keep spreading the word. More and more people now, the registrations are open now. It's not just the introductory class that is compulsory for registering for L1, L2, L3, L4. Just you can directly register for L1, L2, L3, L4. And you just see that some of you are senior meditators or coordinators. See that, encourage you yourself can register some of the people who are interested, your known contacts, known people. Eventually, some people, they may require some push, some motivation, some encouragement, and that you can definitely give, so that they can also come into this path of right view, this right view knowledge, right view practices, right view meditations. This is the right path and right gift that you can give to them. So now registration started. So again, I want to close this as early as possible because we have to pool everything and we have a different plan this time for conducting this L1 to L4 courses online also. Simultaneously, I'm planning offline. People who are asking here. So that I want to say close these registrations as early as possible. And again, for this May and June, we have to work on that. So make these things fast, quickly. Just see that all these things happen, so that so planning and designing these courses become easy for us. Okay. So may all of you be happy, healthy, and peaceful. May all beings also be happy, healthy, and peaceful. Sukhi hontu.